coaches or bosses who tell people to do things that they're not willing to do themselves, they're not authentic. And people see through that. If people on a team think you're not in it for me, you're just in it for yourself, they're out.
We got some coaches on the podcast today. This one is action-packed. Today I'm joined by Jerry Lynch and John O'Sullivan. John O'Sullivan is the founder of Changing the Game Project, an organization dedicated to helping coaches, parents, schools, and youth sport organizations give sports back to our kids and put a little more play in play ball, as he says. He's a former collegiate and pro soccer player, has coached for over 30 years on the youth, high school, and collegiate levels. He's written 2 best-selling books, Changing the Game and Every Moment Matters, and has consulted with the USOC, US Soccer, USA Swimming, US Ski and Snowboard, USA Wrestling, Ireland Rugby, National Rugby League of Australia, the PGA, and a bunch more. He's also joined us on this podcast in the past. And we're also joined by Dr. Jerry Lynch. Jerry's the founder and director of Way of Champions, a human potential performance consulting group. They help others master the relationship and culture building games in athletics, business, and life. Jerry's published 17 books in over 10 languages. His works impacted teams, coaches, and athletes in the NBA, pro lacrosse, Major League Soccer, in addition to men's and women's basketball, lacrosse, field hockey, swimming, soccer, tennis, golf, track and field at the University of North Carolina, Duke, Maryland, California, Syracuse, Stanford, Harvard, and Middlebury. Got that all out. In the past 35 years alone, Dr. Lynch has helped influence 118 plus, because someone probably has already won another one in the course of me doing this opening, World, National, Conference, and State Championships. I'm excited to talk about their new book, The Champion Teammate, Timeless Lessons to Connect, Compete, and Lead in Sports and Life. And you may be saying, what do a bunch of coaches that coach sports have to do with the future of work? And I'll tell you, the future of our workforce are on a playing field somewhere. They're in schools. And I would also argue that maybe in our corporate environments, we need to think about the lessons of being a better teammate in general anyway. We talked about what it takes to build a strong culture. We talked about the biggest challenge to coaches today. We talked about the importance of leading by example. We also talked about training, and is that enough anymore? Here's John O'Sullivan and Dr. Jerry Lynch. Let's bring it
in. John, I'd love to start with you. First question out of the gate. Why the champion teammate?
Well, Jerry's giggling too, because we wrote the book with very little disagreement, or we were just sort of, it just came out of us. We're like, yes, but like coming up with a title and a cover, we had so much back and forth, and disagreement's probably even a tough word. But I mean, Jerry, I don't know how many different titles we went through to come up with a descriptor, right? We wanted to write a book about being a great teammate, and we wanted to help people understand that sometimes in your season, the things that you do, right, you can do everything right and still not end up with a medal around your neck. But it doesn't mean that you're not a champion. It doesn't mean that you didn't maximize your potential as an individual and as a team. And so we take time in the introduction of the book to really define, like, what do we mean by champion? You know, doing the best that you can do with the tools that you have in the moment, and that it's not something that you become, right? It's something that you are. It's something that you do and act and you be every single day. And you loop enough of those days together, and you're going to maximize your potential. And so, yeah, we went back and forth on this title, but really as the book came together and we sort of put the finishing touches on the content, we kind of said, hey, this is what it is. And in spite of all the championships that teams that especially Jerry has and I've worked with, most teams don't end up winning a national title at the end of the year or even a conference title, but they can still have a phenomenal season and a phenomenal bond and deep love and mutual respect for each other. And so I think that's really what's behind the whole title of the book.
Yeah, let me, can I just jump on that, Sam?
Go ahead.
I think what's really important for our listeners here today, I'm interpreting this, John really laid it out there really well, and I'm just totally aware after 45 years how important this topic is, and how little is written about it or spoken about it, and how all those coaches that I've worked with, thousands of coaches and athletes, nobody knows how to go about doing this. This being creating a culture, a strong culture where people get along and people really love each other and like each other and willing to work for each other, for a higher cause, for something bigger than any one individual. What a concept. And being connected as you are, Sam, with the business sector of the world, you know how important that is, how people getting together to create something much bigger than each one individual is so joyful and so filled with connection and caring. And that's why we put that on the title, Timeless Lessons to Connect, to Compete, and to Lead in Sports and Life. So this is an important book, if nothing else, that there's not much written about it. And these coaches, I can attest, do come to me and they say, Jerry and John, I know you've had the same coaches approaching you. Yeah, that's great. We want that. But how do we go about doing this? And so we've laid out a plan, one practical, powerful, profound plan to help coaches to get the team that are working together.
John, you cover, I think the book is easy insofar as it's not intimidating to navigate. There's action steps that coaches will love because they can pick up and start to really reflect and think. At the same time, there's a lot of great stories. You talk to a lot of people, it seems like, that have that have fed insights that you and Jerry have processed to put into this work. Can you talk a little bit about who some of the people that had an effect on the writing of The Champion Teammate?
I mean, sure, right? This is decades of different teams that Jerry and I have both worked with, but also been a part of. And I think that's one of really the main things here, Sam, is like, you're going to be part of teams your entire life. It's not just in sports, right? You're going to be part of a work team, church, community. Your family is a team. And people who are great teammates, people who elevate those around them, who lift people up are fantastic and always in demand. And so sport, especially when you're a kid, is a great place to learn how to do this. But you can learn about it anywhere. I know your listeners, you have a lot of people in retail and restaurant business. I mean, I think about when I graduated college, I decided to split my time between playing some pro soccer and being a ski bum in Vail, Colorado. And I worked in a restaurant for 5 years, right? And I think about the teams of the front of the house and the back of the house. And I think about how the kitchen had to work together. And I think about how the front had to work together. I just think about, like, what's funny is that this restaurant that I worked at in the late 90s, there's still 4 people who still work there, right? There was something about that team that was great. And even when I moved and left, they used to bring me back for like Christmas just to be part of the team for 2 weeks, and things like that. So I think we start with our own experience and what does it feel like to be part of a great team? And what does it feel like to be part of a team that sometimes has a lot of talent, but doesn't function very well. And that's not a good feeling at all. So, this is based on direct work. This is based on conversation. I mean, Jerry and I have done almost 330 podcasts at this point, and talking with people like Steve Kerr, Brad Stevens, Quinn Snyder as NBA World Cup winning coaches, Anson Dorrance, Tony DeCicco. I mean, Tara Vanderveer, women's basketball. I mean, we're got to be close to 200 NCAA championships at least, Jerry, right, on the coaches that we've interviewed. And then we sort of supplement it with psychologists and leadership experts and people who have written books about performance and leadership and team culture and things like that. And so we've we've really gotten to talk to a who's who of high performance, and then tried to distill it down and ask them, what's a great teammate? Who's someone that you think of when you think of a great teammate? And then distill it down into these different components of the book. There's almost 30 little, like you said, short chapters that lay out, it's a short chapter with a story and a lesson. And then how do you implement this? What are the discussion questions as an individual or for your team? And so this is something that you just use, like, you read it as a summer reading, you read it as a weekly thing. You read it as, I was just talking to a friend who, manages, he's part of a giant car dealership family, right? He's like, oh, we're going to use this book, right, for this, because we're all teammates. We all have to work together. And so, yeah, but we learn from everyone. But I think it always starts with our own teams.
Okay, I got the first curveball coming for you, John. Then Jerry, you're up next. So you got to act like you heard, you can't, you're going to riff anyway. John,
No, I'm going to be in the batter's search.
you're on deck.
Pitch clock.
It might feel like a changeup. I don't know. Let's see if it feels like a curveball or not. There's so many things that the word coaching. You look around, if you were to just search coaching in Google, it's not the 1,000 searches that come up. It's millions of searches come up on how to be a coach, how to be a great coach. Thinking about how to, just this framework. And I want to ask you, when you wrote Champion Teammate, what do you think is the biggest challenge that exists today that players are subscribing to? And I brought up coach because this may be because of coaches that may be coaching a certain way or a certain style that doesn't work anymore, or they're maybe misaligned. What do you think the biggest obstacle or challenge today that exists to becoming a champion teammate that we should all be aware of as leaders?
The curveball's coming at me first.
Yes, sir.
I can never hit the curveball. That was the problem. What I would say is, I just think the world we live in, and so let me think about my own kids, and I have teenagers, and they're in high school, and we have an entire world that influences our kids through music and pop culture and certainly social media and everything, where everything says, look at me, get mine, get my money, get my fame, get my likes, get my looks, right? And kids are told over and over and over, what's the number one desired career for teenagers these days? Be an influencer, which is all about selfishness. And yet being a great teammate is all about selflessness. It's about giving to others, servant leadership or service leadership, serving others, asking what I can, give to the group instead of what can I get from the group. And so I think the biggest obstacle as a coach is working with athletes or people, because they're just human beings, right? They just happen to play a sport, working with people who are bombarded all day with the message of it's all about you. It's all about you. Get yourself. And then I have to get a group of all about yous to say it's all about us. And that's the biggest challenge. And, I get that 90 minutes a day or whatever, you get that 8-hour shift at work, and then they leave and they, get 16 hours of getting hammered with a different message. And so I think that, Jerry might disagree, but I think that's the biggest challenge that I see, especially I see it in the daily lives of the kids that I coach and my own children.
Disagree, Jerry.
You're going to throw another one at me, or is that?
No, it's over to you. Yeah.
Oh, over to me. Okay. There's so much to unpack here. The question is brilliant. And I, unlike John, I love curveballs. I'm a left-handed hitter, and I could always go into that ball very easily. But having said that, I think John, I want to echo everything John said, because he's right on. If I were asked the question first, I would have gone down that route. But I want to elaborate a little bit more on it, John and Sam. And that is, we are in a society that coaches are facing that is really challenging when these young people are coming and asking the question, what can I get here? Can I get more playing time? Can I get more minutes? Can I get more notoriety, more attention? Can I get? And really, what this book is about, if I had to sum it up, it's about learning how to be a good teammate, is learning how to be a good human being. Being kind, being thoughtful, being caring, being giving, being selfless. And when you're being that way, all the other things fall into place like a miracle. And so, this book is simple, but it's not easy. The not easy part is coaches need to understand that it's going to take a little time. And some coaches say, well, I don't have time for that. And I'm saying to them, you don't have time not to do that. You can't afford to not take the time to do it. And so this whole concept that John's talking about, I think about, let's dig the well before you're thirsty. Dig that well before you're thirsty, because it's going to happen. You're going to have teammates. Every single championship team that I've been a part of, and there've been over 100 of them, every single one have had a bad apple. Every single one of them have had a cancer that grows on the athletic soul. And over a period of a season, you can completely destroy everything you've built in terms of your culture because of that one teammate. And how does a coach deal with that? Well, if you dig the well before you're thirsty, what you're doing is you're winning the game before it even, you're winning the war before it even takes place. And so this book, the Champion Athlete, it helps coaches to see and head off at the pass potential problems by building a community that cares for each other, and where people are willing, they're successful because they're servants. So you don't come to get things, you come to give things. Come to my team and give. What are you going to give? How are you going to serve? And that requires certain characteristics like kindness. And kindness, being vulnerable, having courage, being who you are. And so, to me, it's easy, but it's simple, but it's not easy. And the simplicity of it is brought out in this book. And so all the listeners here, we have a game plan for you, and it's ahead of time. And so you can dive in deeply and come out with ways that team will function as a family who care for each other and willing to go the distance and do everything that's required that you're asking them to do. And that's really what we all want, whether we're in a church group, the military, or we're in a restaurant. I like the analogy with the restaurant, John. That was awesome. And I'll just make a comment about that. Go to a good restaurant. You know what? People come out and say, why was that a good restaurant? Well, of course the food's good. You wouldn't go there if the food weren't good. But the comments are always, God, the waiters, the waitresses, the servers, everyone was so good, so attentive, so on it, working together as a team. And that's what this book is all about.
One of the things I kept thinking about as I was going through it, and between both of you with your podcast series and your many books, and John, Every Moment Matters, the thing I kept coming to as I thought about what it made, it was reflective. How am I as a teammate? Even me as a coach. How am I as a teammate? Even as a coach, we could probably talk about that. Coaches are teammates too. I was thinking about, we live in a world where everything is so outcome based, and you both talk about this a lot. Focusing on the behavior over the outcome. But I was thinking about how that was relevant as well when the goal is to be a good teammate, because the outcome isn't just about, to your point, John, just getting mine in a relationship. It has to be focused on the behaviors that go into it. I don't know if you have any other coaching up on top of that, but I kept coming back to this parallel between when as a team, when you're trying to get a team focused on behaviors over outcomes, it feels like there's a lot of similarity between when you're trying to think about how are you being a good teammate to the people all around you every day, whether it's on a team or inside of a company.
Is that for Jerry first or from me?
Well,
I can, Jerry, you go first this time.
I'll jump on that one. And I know you have some different thoughts on this, or parallel thoughts. But you can't do it every day. We're human beings. And I think that's one of the things that the book brings out. It's not like you read this book and all of a sudden you're going to have it nailed. You're going to crush it. You're going to go out there and every day you're going to be the great teammate, the exceptional, the extraordinary teammate. That's not going to happen. What's going to happen is the perfect teammate is 100%. We never reach perfection. And what this book does is it brings you maybe right now you're 30% a good teammate, 30% of the time, 3 out of 10 days. What this book will do is it'll raise that percentage. And what we're trying to do is help people to understand that we can go forward incrementally, slowly. This is not like you read the book and all of a sudden, bam, okay, now I'm ready. No, it could take years. I mean, I'm only halfway there in my leadership, in my teammate ability. But I'm increasing that percentage of time where I'm able to function at that higher level. And what I want to say too is this thing about control. Control outcomes, like even if you take on all right, let's say you take on as a goal, I'm going to be the best teammate. You can't control being something. I mean, you can't control an outcome, but you can control those things that allow you to be. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So if I want to be kind, I can control being kind. You can't stop me from being kind. If I want to control being courageous, if I want to control being selfless, you can't stop me from being that way. But if you want to try to control the outcome by me being a good teammate, that we're going to now all of a sudden win games and we're going to have a better organization and our restaurant is going to be voted #1 in the city of Portland, Oregon, or whatever it happens to be, you can't do that. You can just take on the little things that make a huge difference. From little streams come big rivers. This book is about the little things. And the little things, the chapters are little. They're 2 pages, but they're very expansive and they expand your world. And we do it one step at a time. John, I see you chomping at the bit there. You want to add your...
I mean, I just think what you said at the end there sums it up, that we control behaviors. And when you feel in control, you have agency, you have autonomy, you feel like you have right. Whether I'm on a sports team or if I'm on a sales team could do everything right and still not close the deal because someone else had a better product or a better offer, but we could still do everything right. And so what we can look at then is, what were all the behaviors? What were all the things that went into our presentation? Why didn't it work? What can we optimize or maximize next time and do this again? And if we get the behaviors right over and over and over, and we're selling a decent product, we're going to eventually win. And if we get the behaviors right on a sports team and we do it day after day after day, we're eventually going to give ourselves the best chance of being successful. Now, you know what? You could be on coaching a high school team that's, in a division with a bunch of behemoths, and you're just not going to win, right? Because talent matters eventually. But I think when we're in the human development business, when we teach people what they can control, and we focus on their behaviors that are within their control, and we hold them accountable to a standard of behavior, we're developing better people, better human beings. And I think as a youth sport coach, that's my job. And I just use soccer or lacrosse or tennis as a vehicle. And I think as a boss in work, it's the same thing. I'm trying to develop better people. And you know what? Like I think the hardest thing about being a great coach who develops people is that your good people will move on. The hardest thing about building a great company is if you hire the right people, they'll eventually have the chance to move on. But then you have to learn to celebrate that and take pride in the fact that your influence is growing because of what you've poured into them. And so, yeah, but it all goes back to agency and ownership and what I control. And if I do that, I feel like there's this word. I was just listening to this really interesting concept that they say is more powerful than grit, which is hardiness, right? And the idea of hardiness is this combination of commitment, control, and challenge. And I thought that was really, really interesting because people with hardiness are also adaptable, whereas people with grit just keep banging their head against the same wall. But hardiness sometimes is that ability to pivot and switch and move. And I don't know, I just found that to be a very interesting concept that I've been contemplating a lot today.
Wow, that's powerful, John. Thanks for sharing that. That's great.
Yeah.
Can I add one thing to that, Sam? A lot of people on teams, again, restaurant, churches, military, athletic, whatever it is, family. A lot of times they're struggling, athletes. I'm on a team and I'm really having a hard time, and I'm wondering, how am I going to get out of that? And what most people do is they try to really force the issue of positioning themselves to get more, so they feel better. It's like going on a shopping spree when you're depressed. You're going to get all that stuff and you're going to feel better. But it doesn't work that way. That's not the way the psyche is set up, and that's not how to be successful. When that happens, it's so important that we build up others. So whenever if I'm feeling blue, or I'm feeling down, or I'm feeling like, life just isn't working out today, it's a tough day. Or maybe I'm feeling down. I lost a dear buddy, a dear friend. They're no longer with us. What I've got to do is I've got to build up others. I've got to build relationships. And one of the things that we do in this book is we talk about how to do that. And one of the things practically that I'll pass out to give people a glimpse of what they're going to get in this book is we talk about the river effect. And the river effect is very powerful. It's an acronym, and we call it a JACronym. It's a John Jerry acronym. And what we do is we talk about R being relevant, I important, V is valued, E is to empower, and R is respected. So that's river, RIVER. So what I say to you people who are listening, all you coaches out there and entrepreneurs and whoever you are, when you are not feeling good yourself, if you can do things to help others feel valued, feel important, feeling relevant, feeling empowered, feeling respected, what's going to happen is you're going to light up their day. When their day gets lit up, everyone starts to feel better, including yourself. And everyone wants to give back to you. So the very thing that you need, you're not getting directly, you're getting it indirectly by going out and dousing others. I call it marinating others in the river. Let them douse themselves in the river. Make people feel good. So I pick up my cell phone the other day, right? I pick up my cell phone and I type a text to my son, Brennan. And I said, Brennan, I know I don't say this enough to you, but you're an awesome son, and I don't know what my life would be without you. You're wonderful. I love you. And in a matter of like minutes, he happened to have his cell phone with him. He got back to me. He says, Dad, I love you too. And that really meant a lot to me. I made his day. I wasn't feeling so good that day. I had just lost a friend, and I was thinking about myself all day. And finally I got that, I had to go to the book, and I read that part. Well, the thing is, I really didn't go to the book. I knew it ahead of time. But anyway, that's why this book is so powerful. It's very practical, in the moment, as John said, right there happening as you need it.
I've struggled to put the words together as I feel, but what you just said triggered it, both of you. is the coach kind of the ultimate teammate? Do they have to be the ultimate teammate? Like, I mean, can a coach be a bad teammate?
Oh, for
What do you
sure.
think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like the idea of a coach or a leader as not someone who shines the spotlight, but someone who's the torchbearer, right? Who walks the journey and shows people the way and lights the way, but you're on the journey with your people. I think coaches or bosses who tell people to do things that they're not willing to do themselves, who say you need to be more respectful and don't show respect, who say you need to listen better and don't listen, who say you need to be more organized and are unorganized, they're not authentic, and people see through that, right? It doesn't matter what your resume says. Very quickly, if people on a team think you're not in it for me, you're just in it for yourself, they're out. They check out, right? And in professional sports, they ask for a trade, right? In collegiate sports, they hit the transfer portal, right? And in high school sports, they just kind of check out, right? And so I think this is that a coach is, you have to have that level of separation because you're the ultimate decision maker, right? You're not being someone's teammate doesn't mean you're their best buddy, right? But you have to live within the standards and the values of that team. And if you're a coach who personifies and exudes them, then people will follow you because at least you're authentic.
Let me add some
Yeah,
follow up to you real quick on this one, John. In 1 second, Jerry. I want to ask the one thing you say in the book. You talk about standards versus rules. I think I recall, and I thought
Mm-hmm.
you both had a great definition of kind of a rule being. Test me here. Let's see. A rule was like a guideline. It was a regular. Like you had to do it. It felt like exactly what you just said. This is a rule, and if we follow that logic, the boss, the manager, that type of coach that doesn't maybe get the best traffics in rules and regulations, more consistently than standards, which you talked about being like a tier of quality or a quality that the team subscribes to, that is very different. Am I
I mean,
correct?
rules are bumpers, right? And we need rules in certain places, right? We need rules for surgeons that they follow a certain protocol, like please wash your hands, right? Something like that. Like these are rules that are really important. But standards are things that we aspire to, right? And teams that have lots of rules will find those rules being broken all those times. Teams that have high standards and have the right group of people, aspiring to them and pulling others along with them, can operate without a lot of rules. And I think the most highly functioning teams often have high standards. They only have the amount of standards that they're willing to hold people accountable to. So having 22 of them is kind of silly because no one knows what they are. But having 3 or 4 or 5 really high standards, and then very few rules. And those seem to be the most highly functioning teams that I've been a part of, because when you have high standards, you don't really need a lot of rules.
yeah, I always come back to the idea that you only need one rule, John and Sam. And that one rule is do the right thing. And I dare anyone out there to say, I don't know what the right thing is. You all know what the right thing is. We all know that. Unless you're kind of a bit on the spectrum and you're out there on the right side or the left side on the extreme, and you haven't really functioned at a high level. But most people, even the worst coach or the worst teammate, we know what's right. Like you don't go out on a Friday night and party when you have a championship game on a Saturday or a Sunday. You know that's not the right thing to do. And so when I give that idea to a coach, they get rid of all their rules and they have one rule. And it is a standard. The standard is knowing what that right thing is to do. And so at the end of the day, when someone does something that's not right, you go over as a coach and all you do is ask one question. Help me understand why going out drinking last night was the right thing to do. Please. I want to know. I mean, I want to learn something. And they're there and they're just like, I don't know, coach, you're right. All right. So what would you do if you were in my situation about you and that behavior? So you give them ownership, you give them responsibility, accountability, just by having that one standard or that one rule. And, you know, I don't know, standards, I like the differentiation that you make, John, because it really is elevating to me. You know, a standard is an elevation. I worked with Stanford University athletic program for many years, still have a consultancy with some of them, but we always talked about the Stanford standard. And the standard was very high. It's a championship culture. And what does that mean? Well, as we say in this book, a champion is one who is right now being and living what that rule is, what that standard is, doing the right thing, and also communicating with each other and picking up after yourself. We have a chapter in this book which is was instigated or motivated by the All Blacks rugby team from New Zealand, and it's called Sweep the Shed. And OMG, right? I mean, sweep the shed. Who? All the athletes? No, all the teammates. And who is one of those teammates? The head coach. If the head coach goes by and sees some stuff on the playing field that really doesn't belong there, he doesn't go into the locker room and say, "Hey, get out there and clean that field." And that head iconic servant leader coach goes out and picks up whatever he wanted to pick up. And you know what? That happens. And when an athlete sees a coach do that, what's the message that's being sent when the top of the ladder can do the things on the bottom, the little things? You see what I'm saying? Sam, you were going to jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're on the money. The one thing that I circled in the book that I thought was really really true today. You know, living in a time when John talked about this a little bit, there's just so much coming at us. You know, social media. You know, I think part of that get mine culture that may emerge comes from being too invested in, you know, a social media platform or what somebody has to say or wherever that may come up, whether digital or not. And as I thought about what the part of the book that impacted me the most, there was a chapter in it called "Fly in a Chair," and that element of being able to pause and visualize and think ahead amidst all of the chaos that typically may happen was something that, you know, again, I circled in my book and I come back to as a coach with my teammates, trying to think about how we create the right environment. And it's not necessarily being positive, but to me, I interpret it as, thinking forward. So I wanted to ask, that's my interpretation. I want to ask both of you, what was your favorite, I'll start with John, like what chapter in the book was your maybe favorite, the one you find yourself coming back to most, at the end, the one that you maybe edited over and over again simply because you wanted it to be right and wanted it to be perfect, the one that you felt the most invested in? What was that for you in the book?
It's funny, usually for me, the chapters that I like the best are the ones that really just come out because they're coming from some place, like they're coming from your heart, and it spills out of you. That's my experience in writing that oftentimes. And oftentimes, like when I've done books, I write the chapters that I find easier first, and then I slog my way through the other ones. Like I know when we came up with the topics for this book and we split them up, and Jerry's like, well, I'll take these ones and you take this ones and whatever. And I think we probably both had some on our list that were like, oh God, do I really have to write that one? And not because it's not important. It's just like, you always have a story in mind, or you always have an idea in mind that really just resonates. So I mean, and a lot of the stuff we've both written about before in other books, and certainly for me on my blog posts and stuff like that. So this concept of sweep the shed is one that's really, really sticky with me. And it's one that, someone doesn't have to be 15 to understand this. I coach a bunch of 8, 9-year-olds, and we talk about this story, and we talk about, how important humility is for getting better, and how important, and, that selfless and that idea of leave the shirt in a better place, how important that is. I think, we talk a lot about character and developing character, but sport might naturally develop what we would call performance character, right? Grit and hard work and determination. But it doesn't develop moral character unless the coach and the parents and the adults in the room intentionally talk about it and teach it, right? So I coach a bunch of 8 and 9-year-olds. If the only thing I do is teach them soccer, what a waste of a year, right? But if I can teach them about being better citizens and better human beings, and sport is that vehicle, well, great. And the sweep the shed story is a huge one, because a lot of kids walk through the world waiting for someone to pick up after them, right? But if the best, most high performing sports team in the world never expects that, no one has to clean their locker room, no one takes care of the All Blacks, the All Blacks take care of themselves, well, that's a powerful thing. And so so that's one of my favorite chapters and favorite messages to get across to the college teams I work with, the high school teams I work with, and the little kids I work with, right? That, be humble. If you see a piece of garbage, pick it up, right? Pump up your soccer ball, wear the right uniform, things like that. It all matters.
What about you,
Kerr,
Jerry?
what was yours?
There are so many chapters in here that I absolutely love, not because John and I have written them, but because we've written them because the topic is so important. I guess if I had to pinpoint one, and what do we have, John, about 30 of these little chapters?
Yes, sure. Yeah.
Something like that. Who's counting? The one that stands out to me is Win the Day. And win the day is reading this book. To me, is winning the day. It's something you can control and something you can be. And you can be a champion teammate right now. This is not about becoming a champion teammate. It's about being it. That's winning the day. And the way I came up with this idea is I was at Middlebury College one year and working with the tennis program. And I got into the room with the athletes and the coaches, the staff, and everyone was like all upset that they had lost the championship the year before, and they were determined to win it again this year. And they're all chanting and, oh, going to win, going to crush them. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I'm saying, how about let's just start with today? How can we win the day? I just sort of came up with that idea. And they looked at me puzzledly, and they said, what do you mean win the day? I mean, what can we do today? What can we control today? You can't control that you're going to go into a May of this coming year, and win the national championship. There's no way you can do that. But I'll tell you this, if you do focus on that, then what's going to do to you, it's going to make you tight, tense, tentative, stressed, anxious. Why? Because we can't control. And anything we cannot control, we tend to get tense and tight and tentative about it. So I said, if you win the day, what that really means is let's focus in on what we can control, the little things, showing up on time, as John says, wear the right uniform. Another thing is, clean up after yourselves, make sure that your home is clean and tidy. What else can you control? I can control my warm-ups. I can control my mental preparation. I can control how I work with my teammates to be a better teammate. So win the day encompasses all of this. And so what we do when we win the day is we focus only on those little things. And if you focus on the little things each day, when I get up in the morning, I think about what I have to do, and I'll have a list of things. And I visualize, I imagine how I'm going to go about the day. And I just give about 3 minutes of attention to how I'm going to win the day. Because when I put my head on the pillow at night, I want to look back and say, that was a great day. That was a masterpiece, or not. Then I'll go back to the drawing board and try to win the next day. What I can't do is I can't win your love. I can't come on this show, Sam, and win in the sense of everyone's going to like me. I have no control over that. But what I can control is who I am, being myself, being authentic and genuine, being vulnerable, copping to the fact that, I blew that one. I don't, I guess I didn't know what to say to you with that question. And if I'm being a certain way, I'm winning the day. And so these athletes, end of the story, is they bought into it. I subsequently wrote a book, which is called Win the Day. And it has all those concepts in it. And what we did was we focused on a game plan for the day, all the way up to the championship day. And on the championship day, winning the day, they had on their shirts, Win the Day. As a reminder, it was not about winning the national championship. Their opponent came to win the national championship. And boy, did they get tight. And they got tentative and tense. We showed up to do all the little things. Empower each other, make each other feel important, follow each shot, do this, do that. We won the national championship easily. And it was such a thrill. It just imprinted in my mind and heart how important it is to focus on that one item, winning the day.
Jerry, I like the story in the book about your dad on Grab the Hose. There's a story in the book, which we won't give away. People got to check it out for it. But the message of grabbing the hose that you saw, your dad being a firefighter. My question, we'll start with you, Jerry. For the coaches that are listening, the managers that are listening, when they, folks that buy and read the Champion Teammate, what advice, what's your one piece of advice for them to implement this? Because, you guys make this look easy and you make it sound easy. And, the book, you guys, the river is flowing with content. And, for managers out there in the world, what they're going to say? They're going to say, I work in an environment where the company only pays so much. I can only do so much. Like I didn't hire this person. Now they got to work with me. Oh, we have customers that, customers today, there's all this stuff in the world. And as a coach that is a manager, a leader trying to implement some of these, what advice do you have, speaking directly to them that may be listening, on how to implement this?
Yeah, well, great question. Penetrating for sure. The advice that I have is advice that I've gotten from others, which is often the case. I go back to Gandhi, who said, be the change you want to see. So if I'm in a work environment, you get back to grabbing the hose. My father jumps out of a Chiefs car and he wants I'll call them the athletes, they're the firefighters. He wants them to be a certain way, and they're not being that way. Rather than shout orders and tell people, you show them the way. Be the change you want to see. So, I won't tell the story, but when he jumps out of the car, and if they're not running into that burning building with the hose to put out the fire, he's going to lead them, and he's going to grab that hose and say, hey, follow me. I'm going to show you how to do this. And I'm going to be what you need to be, and then come out of the fire and then give you directives from there. But being the change you want to see is so important to me. Like, for instance, even in my relationship with the woman I'm married to, Jan, she's a very capable person to do a lot of things on her own, but I get into that habit of wanting to fix things, or maybe even tell her certain things. And I wish she were a certain way sometimes. I wish she were better at doing what I do. I wish she were more like me. Why can't you be more like me? I'm the right way. No, that's not the case. But if I want something from her and I want her to be a certain way, all I have to do is start being that myself. And as if I turned on a switch, she's already being that way. So imagine being a teammate. And imagine you want your teammates to be a certain way. Stop telling them what to do. You do it. You grab the hose. You run out on that field and you be the way you want them to be. What about the coach? The same thing. It's no different. My father was a New York City battalion chief. It only goes maybe one step higher or so. He was a leader of men, and he didn't have to do that, but he wanted his men to do it. So he was being the change he wanted to see, and it works all the time. Simple suggestion. We could all implement it very easily.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just echo what Jerry was going to say. How do you implement this, right? Just a little bit at a time, right? Whether it's a book read, it's a study, it's, hey, once a week we're going to read a chapter and spend 10 minutes discussing the topics and how this relates to our team and what we're doing. Like, it's not like you have to bite off huge chunks. And then I think, if I'm a leader listening to this, well, how much control do I have over my team, right? So if I think a lot of people, when they hire people, don't think about why they fire people. And usually it's not because of knowledge, right? You usually hire someone and we hire on their resume and their knowledge, but we fire them because they can't work with other people and they can't communicate, and, they treat people poorly. So do better hiring. And then for those of us who are, customer facing businesses, you don't have to be everything to everyone. Develop great customers too. Train your customers. I mean, I think this is an important thing. This is a lesson I learned from my own brother, who runs a very successful, he happens to be a fisherman in New York. And I remember 20 something years ago when he was starting his business, he didn't have 2 pennies to put together. And I said, hey, I'll come help you out. I was between jobs. I was moving. I said, I got about 6 weeks. I'll come be your deckhand for 6 weeks, and you don't have to pay me. And we'll help get this up and running. And so he runs, a big, party boat that can take out, 50, 60, at this point, 80 people. But this was just in the beginning, and he had a little boat that was kind of barely held together by strong gum. And, he was just trying to make it work. And I remember one day we had 7 or 8 people, ready to go, and we hadn't sailed in a while. And I'm looking at like, wow, there's your fuel for the week. Thank God. And we're on the dock before, and this guy's already probably drunk and he's just acting like an idiot. And I watched my brother go and kick him off. And he kicks him off, and I went up to my brother, his name's Des. I'm like, Des, like, how are you telling them to go home? Like, you need every penny, man. Like, how are you going to pay for gas this week? And he says to me, he's like, John, you know what? If I'm going to build this business, I want great customers. I don't want people like that. If in order to be successful, I need to put up with people like that every single day, then I'd rather not be successful. I'd rather the business go under. And that's always stuck with me, that story. And I remember my brother just being persistent and sticking to that idea. And I remember that first year, whatever he did in gross revenue, he does in a week right now, because he built a business around great customers that other people want to come and be a part of as well. And so I think that when you're building a sports club, when you're hiring a work team, right, bring in people and sell to people and serve people that want what you are offering, and be perfectly okay with the fact that I'm not, that this isn't for everyone. And I think that's a really important just quality. And I don't know if it answered your question, but I just thought it was an appropriate story.
Great story.
Standards.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, last question. In the book, you, at the end of chapters, you come back to this concept of things you should start, things you should stop, and things you should keep doing. Now, I've asked both of you, in some cases, multiple times, my final question is always, what's your hope for the future of work? I'm going to change that. First time we've changed it, because can't keep asking you guys your hope for the future of work. So I want to ask you your question back. What do you think we should start, stop, and keep doing when it comes to work? What is your hope for the things that we should start, stop, and keep doing in work today? I'll start with you, John.
For me, I think this depends on your work, because everyone is doing something differently, well or not so well. So what I would say is that regardless of the business you're in, it's probably a people business, either the people you work with or the people you serve. So, you should always start or keep being great at relationships or stop breaking them and ruining them. And then I think one of the most important things is just start being more intentional about the things that you do. Be more intentional about your team, how you interact and work with each other, your standards, your culture, and how you lead. I think, if you focus on being intentional on the things that matter, you're always going to be better at work. And if you just leave them to chance every once in a while, you might knock one out of the park, but you're probably gonna strike out more than you like.
Well, let me, thanks for giving me the opportunity after John, because it gave me some time to think about this. John, you took off the hot seat so much more than I have today. But it's real clear to me what we have to stop being is we have to stop being afraid to fail. And failure is our greatest teacher. Let's know that. Anybody that's listening, whatever you're good at it because you have failed so much. I am one of the world's biggest failures. And it's not on my resume, but I am. And my resume was established from failing to the 10th power, what I've succeeded doing. So how do we do that? By focusing more on what we're learning and moving ahead with that. So let's stop being so afraid of failing. What we want to start being is we want to start being more loving to each other. And by loving, I don't mean romantic love. Come on, that's reserved for a very special few people. I'm talking about loving each other as human beings, because we're human beings. Like, I love what you and John, I love both of you guys because you're human beings who are being so helpful to the rest of the world. I mean, I love that about you guys. And so what we need to start being is more loving. Phil Jackson, the coach of the Chicago Bulls and LA Lakers, 11 rings and on and on. A guy's been one of the more successful leaders that sports has ever known. He once said that there are many ingredients to build an NBA championship. And, talent, of course, was one. Grit was another, and on and on. So he had this long list. And he said, but there's one ingredient that without which, if it's not included, everything else is worthless. And that was love. Every one of my championships had a lot of love on the team. And you might not like somebody some days, but you love them basically because they're human beings. They have pure intention. They mean well. They want what you want. Coaches, stop fighting your athletes. They want what you want. If they're not giving it to you, it's because they're insecure or they're afraid. And you can help with that. So let's start to give more love. Let's start to have less fear. And how about what I want to keep is I want everyone out there to keep being yourself. This is not about changing who you are. This is about adding to who you are. You are good enough right now. You don't have to go out there and read this book to become a better person. What you can do is read this book and have people see the greatness about yourself and who you are, because you're using ways to communicate to people and to get to a place where people are going to come into their own as well. So just be yourself, be authentic and genuine.
John, Jerry, you guys made great teammates, I must say. I appreciate you taking time. Thank you.
Well, let's not end it there. Hold on. Yeah, we're great teammates. And John and I, we've had this conversation a few times. It's kind of ironic in a way. John, this book was probably, other than the title and whatever, the cover, it was probably one of the easiest books you've ever written.
Oh, for sure.
right? And for me, it's been one of the easiest books I've ever written, and one of the more joyful experiences of my writing life. And I've written 17 books, right? Okay, what am I saying here? We were teammates. We didn't think about this at all until the book was done. But everything in this book, we were being with each other. You know, John would grab the hose some days, or I would grab the hose someday. You know, we were being kind to each other. We were being flexible, understanding. We were listening to each other. We had courage. So being a teammate, writing this book was so essential to make this the wonderful experience. And I want to reach out to everyone and say, when you have a team filled with champion teammate behavior, you're going to have that same experience. The outcomes will be a mere reflection of that teammate experience that you've had.
Love it. And on that, John and Jerry, thank you again.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. So much fun.
I could talk to these guys all day. A ton of big takeaways. Teams with standards don't need rules. We talk about a truth today within organizations who oftentimes try to create entire systems and process and strategies to keep people within the lines. I love to talk about hardiness, commitment, control, and challenge. And the point was made that, being human is simple, but it's not easy, which speaks to the fact that as leaders and coaches, it's our responsibility not just help our players play the sport or the position they're in, but to help them develop them for wherever the road takes them. I also think the comments around living in a world that's more of a look at me culture and a get mine culture, it's a real challenge today. We have to find a way to move from that to more of a culture of caring about us. These guys talked a lot about the fact that you're going to be a part of teams your entire life, whether you're playing youth sports or you're working in the workforce, which means we really should put some thought to what it takes for us ourselves to be better teammates for the people around us. And maybe if we did that, we would build a future of work that's worth working for. Thanks to John O'Sullivan and Dr. Jerry Lynch again for joining us on the podcast. Congrats on your latest book, The Champion Teammate, Timeless Lessons to Connect, Compete, and Lead in Sports and Life. Head on over to your local bookstore. You can find these guys online. Dr. Jerry Lynch, John O'Sullivan, The Champion Teammate. Now don't forget to subscribe to Bring It In so you never miss an episode. We've got some awesome guests lined up that you're not going to want to miss. Now, back to work.